Woran lag das?
Ich sag ganz klar, dass es meine Schuld war, nicht irgendwie, weil ich eine schlechte Kindheit.
Okay, so I don't know what this means. Right, hood, sense. So let's make a sentence card. I'm pretty sure this is the one I want. Card. Yep, height, child, hood. And there we go. We have our card. Hey guys, so you know these standard Anki cards that are either there by default or when you downloaded a shared deck, then you get them? Do you know that's actually not required and that there's many different options for Anki card styles? In this video, we're going to be talking about the library of different flashcard formats and how they each have their own pros and cons. You will certainly find a card that suits your needs. So let's go. If you're new to Anki, or you're not convinced that your Anki is rightly set up for language learning, check out my first video on Anki to help you define the key terms and options so that you can start your language learning journey without needing to break your sails. If you're instead experienced with Anki, learning a language for more than just a few months, then I recommend checking upon whether or not you're making these popular Anki mistakes in this video. Simple vocabulary cards. When you start your language immersion journey, it would be recommended to use subtitles, right? Because if you don't, you'll probably be frustrated because nothing would seem comprehensible, especially when listening comprehensibility seems to be weaker than reading comprehensibility for most people. Though, your goal might be to watch content in your target language without this frustration, to just be able to understand the content and not worry about anything else. Don't worry, I had that same feeling, and the main thing that helped me to get closer to my goal of language fluency was using Anki. Not just Anki. Anki itself doesn't have anything. What I'm actually talking about is rather vocabulary flashcards. A general rule of thumb in Refold is to use Anki for the first 1,500 most often occurring words in your target language as single vocabulary flashcards. Of course, knowing 1,500 words after completing the deck won't make you fluent, but knowing that many words will make you understand around 90% of any content in your target language. Doesn't that sound exciting? Just a few more and that would make 100%. So how to get started? There are two approaches to using an SRS to learn common words. Firstly, use a pre-made vocabulary deck. Secondly, find a frequency list and create your own cards. The simplest way to get started is with a pre-made deck. Although high-quality decks might be difficult to come by, most decks are made with software and have not been curated for easy learning. They often include words that aren't necessarily for immersion, as well as poor translations or missing or wrong audio. Making your own cards takes more time up front. But if you can't locate a well-curated deck, it might be worth it. It doesn't matter which way you travel, just choose one. In these types of cards, you are focusing on comprehension, not production. The purpose of learning vocabulary is to be able to recognize and understand the terms that you will encounter during your immersion. You only need to study cards with your target language on the front to practice recognizing. Comprehension or recognition cards are those having your target language on the front. This is the opposite of production or recall cards, and you don't need these types of cards. It's best when you produce your target language, that is, speak and write in your target language, later, after you acquire your language. All the words you learn now will have a front row seat in your subconscious, ready for that moment. Keep in mind that 1,500 is not a magic number that must be followed. It's fine if you just do 1,000, but the most important part is that you're doing your Anki reps and doing them every day. You just want to establish a vocabulary that will help you grow faster. Before moving on to more advanced Anki flashcard setups, you do not need to finish the most common 1,500 words. When you level up or get to stage 2 of Refold, you'll make a new deck and start mining sentences from your immersion material. You can compare cards, or you can skip this beginner deck in favor of sentence mining. Sentence mining is usually much better than vocabulary cards, but for beginners, I recommend vocabulary cards for starters. Make sure you choose the path that you will enjoy taking the most. Basic sentence mining. So what's this sentence mining that everyone's talking about? Do I really need to bring my chisel with a hammer to work? The answer is sadly no. Mining sentences is only figurative. It's the process of taking, or mining, sentences from your immersion and placing them to your Anki deck so that you can study the sentence through the spaced repetition system. But you're not focusing on the sentence, albeit it's important. Rather, you want to snare pesky words that keep ruining your immersion because they lower your understanding. If you knew these words, then your life would run easier. Thus, the strategy of sentence mining is to increase comprehensibility of your immersion. Sentence mining is done through the active selection of unknown words with their sentences as help, so that they can be easily tamed in Anki. So what should I put on my card? Even at the stage where you leveled up from vocabulary word cards to sentence mining, you still want to get very simple. Just put the text of the sentence on the front of the card, and on the back, put the definition of the target word. The word that you're targeting is the word that you don't know. There should be only one unknown word in the sentence to keep your sentence as a coat, a blanket, as context. I've seen a lot of people, even the ones active on the Refold Discord server, use Google Translate to give the translation of the whole sentence. But that's not the purpose of what you're trying to do here. This is still the same as with simple vocabulary cards, except you're given the liberty of choosing a blanket for your vocabulary word, called context, via the sentence. You're not trying to memorize the sentence of your target language with your native language like a robot. Make sure to only have the definition of your target word at the back. Even here, you're not producing the language yet. The goal of these cards is to improve your comprehension by adding more words to your pond. Choosing what to mine. So, every hour of immersion you'll encounter about 100 unknown words. And that's only on a good day. Your time is precious and not all words are created equally. Some appear more often, thus making them peskier. A good strategy for choosing what to mine is to prioritize words that feel familiar. Why? If you have the sense that you've seen the little bugger more than once, then that's a sign that the word is frequent. Frequent words are what is on the radar, big time. Also, make sure that you mine words that are accessible, meaning that they are easy to grasp. Your time would be better spent accumulating understandable words instead of pondering hours and hours on a hard meaning of an obscure word that even your natives wouldn't understand. Made that mistake many times. Still, it's fun to know a word where many natives would think you are quoting Shakespeare. Finally, the most important point of choosing what to mine is you. Not you literally, but your decisions. If you want to focus on World War II vocabulary while reading books about it, then go for it. Words and concepts that you care about will be easily memorized in comparison to school textbooks, something that you do not so much care about, unless you're mental. When to mine. So you're probably going to do manual sentence mining, and I'll talk more about automatic sentence mining later, and you've probably seen my video on my own automatic sentence card generator. Manual sentence mining consists of handpicking what sentences to learn from your immersion. This by far is the best because you get to choose what bothers you the most regarding words that you have no idea of their meanings and trap them to your Anki deck. You can sentence mine either during an intensive immersion session of reading a TV show or during free flow immersion. Try both or try one of them. You do you. By reading a TV show, I mean watching it regularly, but also having the subtitles on, so that you can read them. Free flow is something different, where you don't have the subtitles. You're going to only use the audio and the visual. You can either do sentence mining while immersing, thus occasionally stopping your immersion, so that you can add sentences. That's what I did when I started to immerse, and to sentence mine. Or you can list words on the side and add them after your immersion session. This is what I currently do. And both options are equally as good. It only depends on what you like best. Madfish Japan, an adept Japanese and Mandarin learner, is famous for having a text file on the side to list the words that he wants to add to his Anki deck after his anime immersion session. Advanced sentence mining. Okay, so this is the level where you can make sentence cards that are aimed to be formatted differently from each other. I'll talk about each format in this section. The goal of comprehension cards is for you to understand a chunk of language. You could be shown a single word, a phrase, or even a whole statement. The information on the back of the card will allow you to double check your understanding. From production cards, you'll be asked to recall a section of language. A picture of a refrigerator, for example, could be in front of a card as a cue to remind you to recall the target language phrase for refrigerator. Remember that the true way to learn a language is by acquiring it. which only comes from comprehending your immersion, which can be done through reading and listening. Production cards will not be made here because it would not be useful. Comprehension cards is where it's at. Card formats. What you put on the front of the card distinguishes card formats. This is the most crucial section because it's what you'll be putting your skills to the test on. The back of the cards isn't as significant as the front. Its goal is to aid in your comprehension of what's on the front. Cards might have an audio recording or text on the front. On the face of a card, never insert both the audio and written form of a sentence. You wouldn't be putting your listening or reading skills to the test like that. The audio or text can be the only target word or one target sentence in which the target word is the only thing you don't already know in the sentence. 4 card formats result from the different things you can put on the front and back of an Anki card. All of them are different and have unique pros and cons, which I'll make a possible separate video about, talking about them in more detail. You might want to choose one, some, or all of them. This all depends on you and on what learning stage you are in. Firstly, audio sentence cards. Listening comprehension of a one-target sentence is tested using audio sentence cards. The card's face features an audio clip of the text. This audio will most likely come from a show you're watching, but it may originate from anywhere as long as the line is uttered by a native speaker. At the very least, the reverse of the card should include the sentence in its written form, as well as the target word's definition. Secondly, text sentence cards. Text sentence cards assess your ability to read and comprehend a one-target sentence. The textual version of a statement appears on the face of the card. At the very least, the meaning of the target term should be included on the reverse of the card. Other elements that help you understand the card, such as an audio recording of the target sentence, the audio of the target word, a picture that represents the target word, a screenshot taken from the scene where you encountered the sentence or pronunciation hints, are optionally added to the back of the card. Thirdly, audio vocabulary cards. Audio vocabulary cards put your listening comprehension to the test by asking you to repeat a single word. The target word is pronounced by a native speaker in an audio recording on the front of the card. At the very least, the reverse of the card should include the term in its printed form, the printed version of the term used in an example sentence, as well as the meaning of the term. Fourthly and finally, text vocabulary cards. This is what I talked about in the basic vocabulary cards section. Text vocabulary cards put your reading comprehension to the test by asking you to read a single word. Self-explanatory. The written form of a target word appears on the face of the card. The back of the card should have the following information: the written version of a sentence that contains the term and the meaning of the term, an audio recording of the example sentence, an audio recording of the word in isolation, a graphic depiction of the word, a screenshot of the scene from which you mined the example phrase or pronunciation tip for the target language or example sentence may all be found on the reverse of the card. Guidelines. So here are a few things to keep note of. Imagine you have a test that your teacher announced yesterday and you're studying for it so that you can bring home good grades. The day of the test arrives and you confidently finish it. But then, on the next day, your teacher gives another test, and to your surprise, the test is the exact same. Well, almost, but the questions and answers are very similar. What point does this have except to just waste time? You already completed the test. Well, that's exactly what it does. Wastes your time. Don't make multiple Anki cards for the same meaning of the same word. You're just testing yourself twice without any good reasons. If it was the same word but a different sense of the word, then that's fine. If a term has many meanings, create distinct phrase cards for each meaning, as the word alone is insufficient to distinguish the meanings. Choose the card format that you believe will help you best to learn new words. A card can be converted from one format to another at any time throughout its existence. Keep in mind that putting more hints and context, such as graphics on the front of cards might lead to memories that are dependent on that extra information. As a result, you're less likely to grasp the term when you encounter it throughout your immersion. The presence of an image on the reverse of the card can aid in the formation of stronger memories. When the target word is a noun, having a picture is very helpful, but other word types also work. A visual can be more useful than a definition in some situations. Anki flashcards are very useful for language learning, and you might not know the whole story on how to treat them well so that they, in turn, can treat you well. Check this video out to find out about the frequent mistakes most Anki users make and try to avoid them yourself. See ya!